Okay, welcome everybody to Virtually Connecting. We are at OLC Innovate for our 3:15 session with Breana Yaklin and Caroline White. We're very excited to have them join us and talk to us about their presentation and also just what they're seeing at OLC in general. I want to start with introductions from the virtual community, so I will begin with Ken.
Sure, while I was hitting the Twitter machine. So I'm Ken Bauer, and I do this V-Connecting thing, and I'm a computer science professor at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Guadalajara, Mexico.
Great. Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Lukens. I'm the Director of Academic Technology at St. Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Wilson. I'm a retired scientific glassblower and current community college student in Oakland, California.
All right, welcome. I'm Kristen Eshelman. I'm Director of Digital Innovation at Davidson College, and I'm also going to host and moderate today's session. But we'll start by turning it over to Sundi Richard for introductions with our on-site folks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sundi Richard. I'm an instructional designer, soon to be at Davidson College, I keep saying. So I'm in between. I'm a DC agent right now. Happy to be here with Caroline, and I will let them introduce themselves and the session that they did. So go.
My name is Breana Yaklin. I'm an instructional designer at Michigan State University. I work in the Hub for Innovation and Learning and Technology and for Academic Technology Services.
And my name is Caroline White. I am a learning technology designer with the Hub and MSU Academic Technology. So,
they have a huge.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for being here and for sharing your expertise, your insights. We're really excited to hear from you. And I know you're going to be talking with us a bit about bringing students into the design process. Could you tell us a little bit more about your presentation and your work in that area?
Yeah, so a big part of our work at the Hub is that we want to incorporate student voices in our work, and we want to empathizing with students that's, as a part of the human-centered design process, that we are integrating students as much as possible, employees and student interns working with us, but we know it's not always feasible or possible for students to be embedded on every single project. Way that we wanted to incorporate student voices in those situations was by creating student personas. Part of an effort to do more qualitative research, just in going out and talking to students. We have a lot of survey data, but not a lot of data or anything in terms of going out and just talking to students.
So a little bit about personas as well is they kind of have their basis in user experience design and so part of, I think, the challenge for our work was figuring out a way to kind of make a template for personas or to create personas that were representative of students in different ways. And something I think that we found when we were going through the interview process is we had a lot of qualitative data, and so we had to make decisions about what did we really want to highlight about our students and what would help our design work at the Hub. A bit of background about the Hub as well is we're a fairly new organization on Michigan State's campus. We're a provost initiative, and so tasked with helping MSU reinvent itself as a learning institution. And as Bree mentioned, as an organization, we really value student voice, and we help MSU reinvent itself as a learning institution. You need everyone's voices, faculty, staff, students, and between our interns at the Hub, created a wonderful student innovation team. They kind of do different design challenges to the Hub's projects or with external partners, and so they kind of give student voice and feedback. They use a lot of design thinking principles as they kind of generate. They're actually working on one of the projects Bree and I are also working on right now, so excited about the students that we have involved in the Hub and the conversations that we had with students on around campus as well.
Yeah, I was wondering how you talk to students or how you reach out to them. So they're the ones that come to the hub and are part of that process. But how did you reach out to other students?
So for our first round, having conducted this first set of personas, or this first round of interviews and creating this first set of personas, we know we have a lot more work to do, and it just opened up a huge can of worms for everywhere else we want to go with this. But for our first round, we just wanted to take a first pass at reaching out across campus. So I had some contacts with advisors in the different colleges and some of the directors there. So out to them, asking them to invite students to come and participate with us. And so we asked students for a focus group time. So just finding a time slot that would work for them. We initially reached out, a survey went out to all the students via contacts in their college. We asked them to sign up for a time slot, explain a little bit about what this was, and then from there we grouped students in time slots based on their year.
So we have a question from Chrissy on the chat that I think is interesting. And Chrissy, we're doing the same thing. This is great. Starting to use user personas in our IT services, very user-centered design focused, user experience design focused. She was just asking if you're willing or able to share the personas that you've developed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could talk a little bit about it now, but I don't know if we could send you a link and follow up in terms of things like that.
Well, you both are on Twitter.
We're both on Twitter,
yeah.
yes.
So you can reach out to
them.
them.
So we can reach out there.
The question that this brings up for me is, you did it for your campus, and is it general enough that does that process need to be done on specific campuses, or what are your thoughts on that?
I would say yes. We really grappled with is that we know just from the way we selected, or from the way we reached out to students, that we didn't get a representative sample of students, but and talk a lot about specifically their experiences at MSU, how they decided to come to MSU. And so I know ours are very focused on their experiences at MSU, but I would recommend to anybody else that they try, if they do this kind of work, that they try to look at their own population more specifically. You know, working on trying to get a sample from that's specific to their area, rather than, I mean, look at ours for an
It's
example.
always nice to look at examples.
I was
That's
going
not
to
what
say,
saying.
I
That's a
think
good idea, but-
our presentation as well that we went through earlier today, we had full template, and we walked people through really quickly, because this was something that took us about 5 months for the first round, and we kind of simulated the processes like for personas in our session earlier today. Have kind of a general template that we used and created, which I think can translate across different universities easily. The actual content, there might be some similarities, but I would, again, as Bree said, kind of encourage that individual by campus conversations. I think that was really valuable. And then we do in our slides, which I believe are going to be on the OLC website as well, we have a sample, one of our freshman student personas.
So I'd be curious to ask, because I've been doing some student-focused research recently and getting some pushback on student voice and the appropriation of student voice, and students wondering, you know, what are you doing with this? Like, how do I know that you're taking my student voice and using it in some way is actually benefiting me, or, you know, creating change in my institution? So I'm wondering, how are you, we've had to move away from you know, just data collection to taking those data collections and into what we're calling like design dinner data sessions, where we explain what we're doing with the research, what the research says, and then having the students be involved in some sort of design challenge or something toward an actual change as a result of sharing those stories. Could you talk a little bit about how the students are benefiting from this, or how you're making it clear to them that the use of their voice is actually changing teaching and learning at MSU?
So when we reached out to students, I mean, we went to campuses as well and kind of pitched this to them. So we gave them a little bit of information when we reached out, either verbally or via email, explaining why we're doing this, that it's important to our work at the hub, that we have their voices represented, and that we are here to serve students and improve student experience. The best way to do that is by actually listening to students. And we also talked about it at the beginning of each focus group. So each, students had to sign a consent form before we started. Here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's how we're going to use your information. We also made sure to let everybody know that we're aggregating the data, so nothing will be personally connected to them, representative of what we heard from students.
And we're certainly still working on trying to improve this at the hub, and we've got a really good start with the student innovation team is spaces and opportunities for students who do want to be more involved or more hands-on for them to participate in the conversation. Management processes as well. So if you walk into the hub space, all of our projects are on boards on the wall. We use agile and lean methods to talk about our different projects, and our Monday morning scrum anyone can come to and hear more about what our different projects entail, and also connect with project leads. They have had a few students here and there attend scrum and then talk to project leads about specific projects. So we're trying, we're by no means completely there, but we've started creating more spaces for students to engage in those conversations and to work with the hub, talking to them and us working with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'll just ask one more question and then I'll stop talking. I was just curious, this is so exciting. I was just curious what you've seen as the biggest insight from these user personas, and maybe some of the most impactful changes you've seen happen.
There were so many things that surprised us, both what we heard and what we actually didn't hear. And so I've conducted a lot of work talking with advisors about their experiences with students, and from those conversations anticipated one of the common pain points we would hear would be mental anxiety or stress, and then financial aid. We did not hear that really come up much at all in our conversations with students. And so one of the things that kind of led us to understand is, okay, maybe we need to reach out to students differently, and we know we need to target different populations of students. The face-to-face conversation with the stranger, it might not be the place that some of these students bring up those points, those pain points. So was really number of transfer students we got just from our small sample, and hearing more about their experience and how different it was from our Bennett MSU from their freshman year.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of the most surprising comments to me were subtle things that students sometimes accept as problems. So parking, in terms of transfer students, parking is a real pain point for students. There aren't too many lots around campus where they can park. And I guess that's kind of viewed as like a common complaint. Of course, people are going to complain about parking, but for transfer students, the ability to not be able to park on campus made them feel unwelcome. And kind of the stories behind some of those common complaints that people talk about was really enlightening, I think.
Yeah, it says weak signals, right? The things that you wouldn't expect to hear that come out.
Yeah.
I'm curious, from the virtual community, do you guys have any questions or comments?
There was a lot of nodding at the, they might not tell you that in the interview.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm on your Learning Hub site, and I thought it was interesting where you listed the people that were involved. There was no differentiation between, there were a lot of names on that list. Is that all staff, or are there students on there too, and you don't know who's who? I mean, there's no differentiation on there.
Right, yeah. And we're actually in the process of a website redesign as well. But I think initially some of that making is in some ways intentional. So as an organization, we have a fairly flat culture. So even though you're a student, you could be leading a project. Or even if you're in the first couple of stages of your career, you could be leading a project. It's based on kind of skill set, not necessarily title. intentional decision not to include people's titles and just to include, beyond our director, just to include the contact information. Everyone on our staff, so the hub directly has about, I think, 9 direct reports to our director. And then we're in MSU IT Academic Technology, which is kind of a branch. The way Jessica Knott describes it is kind of where the hub is our biggest client. So anyone who has been working with the hub or who is more the hub's work is listed on our website. So that includes our student interns, the key people from academic technology, and then the people who directly to the hub.
Thanks.
Mark, you had a question about student government involvement. Did you want to ask that?
Yes, I ask this often. I spent a lot of time as a student representative recently, and so I was wondering if your student government is involved in a overall governance process. We call it shared governance in California, and that's one question. And then the second question was if you reached out to student leaders to recruit, a broader array of students or representatives of a broader array of students in your polling.
For the first question, we haven't worked closely with our student governance, so I'm not sure. I don't know if you can speak any more on that.
Yeah, I'm not particularly familiar with the structure. I know we involved in terms of like they'll lead their own initiatives and things like that, but I don't know too much specifically. MSU is called ASMSU. I don't know the details too much about that. And then the answer to our second question is we did a little bit of outreach for our initial push. Bree and I are kind of on pause in terms of further development of personas and kind of reaching some of those other groups that we know we didn't reach the first time. In terms of it's kind of the end of the semester for students, so it's best to kind of go in at the early end of the semester or after finals. The middle time, especially, there's a couple months where students are just overwhelmed and we didn't want to add kind of extra time or take away time from their studies to complete our work. But we've reached out to a couple of different groups, and we definitely need to kind of do another push for that.
Yes. So when we did our initial outreach to students, I said before how we reached out via advisors and directors within their colleges. First outreach and sending out the survey, we weren't getting the response rate we had hoped. We got some, so we had to do kind of a second round of outreach. And when we did that, we asked for more contacts to some of the student groups within colleges. And so actually some of our interviews, we got to go to some of these student group meetings that they already had scheduled and use some of their meeting time to conduct focus groups there as well. Or use that student group to reach out to some of the students in those groups. So we did do a little bit of that. We want to do a lot more. We have ideas about reaching out via more student groups, a few other groups we have it for a second round, or even using some class time if possible, if it sort of coordinates with the theme of the class, and really getting students more involved with developing the personas rather than just.
Yeah, I'm wondering how you get the loners, or the people that don't really join a lot of things, and so maybe classes would be a great way to find those people.
Class in communication arts and sciences too, where it's a 500 student course, and the professor at some point we need to follow up with him is kind of willing to release some time to have this discussion. But that's something we've grappled with as well too, is or get the student stories when the students kind of flying under the radar, might not be talking to people that we could connect with.
That talked about reaching out through advisors even more, since they already have a strong relationship with students, very different kind of relationship than what it was. And so they also are able, have a better understanding of their student population that they talk to on a regular basis. And so if we were able to say, we know we haven't talked to these students and they're not going to come to speak with us, I'll reach out to them and even possibly trying to use advisors to conduct some of those interviews or some of that outreach.
Actually, a question here from DePauli that she's wondering if there are any best practices you have to share using student focus groups. Or maybe this is something that anybody can jump into as well.
Yeah, we'd like to hear that.
We found evenings were probably the best time.
Yeah.
Afternoons or evenings were the best time to talk to students. So we had a lot of evenings on campus. Snacks.
Yeah, food helps.
Food helps. Food helps.
$5 Starbucks gift cards. That's what we went for a little while.
Getting diverse voices is the other one, not letting one person in the room sort of drive the tenor of the conversation, which can sometimes happen with strong personalities. So moderating that conversation to get equal voice time is important.
And I think also the importance to of waiting and giving students time, because something that I think we found is we'd ask a question and they'd respond, and then if we waited a couple seconds after, sometimes we would get them, rather us trying to book it through the whole list of questions, giving them time to think. I thought actually something that was really valuable, I think some of our really robust conversations happened when there were at least two or three students in the room. Sometimes for some of our sessions, we only ended up with one student. I think sometimes it helps to have another student in the room with you. And so one might say something, so one student might answer a question, and then the other student answers a question, goes back, oh yeah, like that's also a pain point for me. So it kind of raises issues that might not have come up the first time.
Yeah, and our sense is that more than 8 tends to get in the way of good conversation. And we typically we'll have a set of questions we want to get through, but we won't follow it to a script. We won't follow it to the letter. We'll kind of make sure the framing is there. But if the conversation starts to go in an interesting direction, we just go with it and see where it goes, which I think is important for focus groups to feel natural and for people to feel relaxed and open up.
We had a list of questions, but I think we really enjoyed that, the opportunity to ask follow-up questions or dig a little bit more for those things that were coming up and knew we'll provide us really rich information.
I would be curious to know if in the course of it sounds like you were doing the research to design the personas for like instructional design uses, but were you seeing patterns from the qualitative data that would have been useful for the administration to see around issues of maybe, maybe you're seeing patterns around particular racial incidents or tensions in areas that you didn't expect? Are you sharing those up the chain for decision makers beyond just instructional design?
Yeah, I think how we've kind of been operating too, and it's mostly in terms of sharing information been kind of internal. So Bree and I, all of our data is in Deduce, and we kind of put a note out to our colleagues like, hey, we got a lot of information that wasn't in the personas. If you have a particular project and you would like to see, there might be things in there that we could talk about more. So I think the one example right now is on MSU's campus, and we heard a lot of stuff related to parking or the scheduling of classes and points and frustrations that creates. So we could pull some of that information for them to kind of see and hear that student voice. That we haven't really shared too much higher up. Our director of the hub is the associate provost for teaching, learning, and technology. So we do kind of have that added. They're kind of directly involved in our work.
We have shared it too with our IT department, and actually had a conversation with some IT members about how to use these, how we gather the data, and actually just some feedback from them as well, just in terms of this again, what would be helpful they really found it helpful, not so much in knowing what students need, but knowing the why behind the what's. They have a better understanding of now, and they can use these to think about students a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, that's the beauty of qualitative research. I think AK has a question. Did you want to jump in?
So the question that I typed in the chat was on how generic or homogeneous or heterogeneous these personas are. Were they university-wide? Were they program-specific? And I'm thinking more specifically in my day-to-day role. I'm the person who runs the online components of my program. I also have a colleague who does the campus. And I'm wondering, so my program's persona for students, how those would compare, let's say, to a university, and how different would they be, the online students from the campus students. And I'm wondering, when you were doing your personas, how did you approach the student populations? Were they lots of different programs brought together for sort of a university-wide thing, or was it university-wide and then drilled down?
It was university-wide. And that was actually something that we really grappled with in terms of creating personas, because I think you can obviously go that layer and tailor it to a specific program or to a specific college. We tried to create kind of general student personas. That was our initial task. But that, for Bree and I too, we had so many conversations, I think, about like, how do we represent this information? Because when you typically design a persona, you have kind of an end product in mind. And so that was kind of a tension for us, is to figure out, we're creating kind of general university personas, but you could dive into specific, like, College of Education students or College of Arts and Letters students, and create personas that way.
So yes, they were very general for this first go around. As we said, we want to do more outreach, and some of the student groups that followed up with yet, but we'd like to for a second round, are some of those more targeted groups. And so we might be able to dig in a little bit more with some of those specific groups. I will say too that even though it's general, just given the way that we reached out to students and asked students to participate, probably got a lot of high achieving students because they are willing to volunteer their time to participate in an interview. And so we know that that's a very specific type of student. So in that way, we know it's not representative of all of our student population. So we try to keep it kind of at a general level for this first go around, and keep that in mind as well, so that when we share this out, we're able to say, this is intended for empathy building. We're not saying that these personas are exactly representative of all of our students at MSU, of the entire population, because we know that's not true.
Yeah, that's great. We had the same issues getting sort of the usual suspects to respond to these. We're having a little bit better luck having student ambassadors go out and do the data collection, which in our case is a little easier because we're not doing a professionally run focus groups. We're actually using an online tool called SenseMaker, which goes out and does sort of distributed ethnographic methods in storytelling. So we just need people who can prime the pump for storytelling, and then they get their stories into the tool. And we're finding that having our students do that instead of me or someone else, the man from the administration, like that just doesn't seem to go over as well, and we're getting much better response rates.
That's definitely something we'd love to do too. The student interns that we have at the hub in particular make things phenomenal, and I have complete confidence in them to be able to create personas and conduct those interviews. And I think you're right. I think sometimes it's easier for students to talk to other students than it is to talk to strangers. Or
I agree. It's a different level of trust. I think. Well, we're actually toward the end of the 30 minutes. I wanted to see if anyone else in the virtual community had a comment or question before we close.
So this is Dipali. And I had a quick question about were different diverse students encouraged to the panel?
Were diverse students encouraged, or?
Given our outreach, yes, because we were targeting, everybody. It was very broad. We didn't specifically target of our students, but that would be something with some of those student groups later on that we would do. I will say I was surprised and impressed with the number of international students we got participating as well. So I was surprised at the number of transfer students participated and the number of international students. So I was pleased to see that, but I know we need to do more in that regard as well.
Thanks.
Well, thank you guys for coming. I know we don't want to take up too much of your time, and we're at the 30-minute mark. So if you had any closing remarks that you wanted to make or any closing insights that you'd love to share, we'd love to hear it. What should we be doing, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, thank you so much
great.
for having us. This is fun.
Excellent. Well,
Good.
thank you all for doing well in your busy days.
Yes.
So we will go
All right.
rejoin the. We have another keynote right about now. So.
Oh, great. Yes, go do it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, virtual community.
Bye.
Bye-bye.